Hey, everybody, it's Mike Watson. Welcome to episode number 15 of our podcast series, Common Things, Uncommon Ways. Very excited to share this one with you. We're going to have this be on becoming the person that your goals require. Think about that for a minute. Becoming the person that your goals require. Now, before I talk too much about this, I got to share a very special person in my life that was very instrumental to me. My mother had a very special talent and skill. When I was younger, it's probably starting around 12, 13, 14, 15, and into my early 20s, my mom would sit me down at least 2 or 3 times a year and ask me, where are you headed, Mike? What are you becoming? What do you want to be? And she would literally, we talk for an hour. What do you see yourself doing this month, this year, the next 5 years? What's your 10-year plan? She was wonderful at making me think about chasing my future, becoming something different, becoming something special. It wasn't necessarily a skill that I possessed, but believe me, she was very, very good about drawing those goals out. She would take sometimes an hour or two to get those goals. What do you want to do? Who do you want to become? How do you want to be known? Where do you want to go? Very, very, very instrumental in my life. And then after she drew all that information out, she said, okay, what's the action plan? What are we going to do to get there? What do you have in place? How can I help you? How can I support you? And she and I went through this cycle of visioning and visualizing and seeing who I was going to become, what I wanted. And it was interesting because a lot of times when she had asked me in the first couple of times we did that over the first 2 years, it wasn't natural. I had to really think about it. And a lot of what I regurgitated early in the early years were what my parents had kind of taught me who they wanted me to become. And as you're a young child, you follow your parents a lot. And then as you get older, you start creating your own thoughts and identities and things. And it was very instrumental. And I was thinking about that today in preparing this podcast and leading into this, because my mom passed away a couple of years ago and I miss her dearly, but I still possess this skill. And when I find myself falling into trying to set goals and then trying to become the person that those goals require that I be, that's a different way to look at it. Most of us would say, hey, I have this goal and what do I got to do to accomplish this goal? Most of us don't say I have this goal and who do I have to be to achieve that goal? There's a big difference in, hey, I work on my health constantly. I love to eat. And that's been a tough thing for me over the years. And I oftentimes in the past, as I've tried to improve my health, I think to myself, well, I gotta get in better shape. I gotta get more active. I gotta do these types of things. And we look at the steps and we don't say, who do I have to become so that the result of those actions is a natural thing? And that's a very, very different mindset. The reason I bring this up today is because I had a wonderful experience. We here at Summa Terra Ventures, we're a real estate development company, as you know, but we believe that many of the principles in this podcast, we believe that many of the principles in this podcast extrapolate to any business, any thought process, any direction, any part of personal improvement in our lives. This is why I started this podcast. I know that all of you don't have aspirations to be a real estate developer or to be in real estate partnerships or investments. However, many of the people that seek us out do. At Summa Terra Ventures, we do things a little bit differently. We have projects that we do around the country, and they're mostly multifamily or mixed use projects. There's the occasional renovation, there's occasional townhome projects and other things. And we have people that are drawn to us and they show up thinking they're going to be an investor. And our corporate documents actually say we have no investments and you are not an investor. We set up partnerships. And one of the reasons we set up partnerships is because we want active and continued participation from our partners. Now, admittedly, with over 100 partners in tow across our deals, all of our partners don't possess the same skill level, the same background, the same history, but the vast majority of them want to learn. They want to learn how to become developers. And we have a saying here at Summa Terra Ventures, if you hang around a long enough time, you'll learn the business. And the way we like to say that is we spawn developers. We've had capital partners become developers in the past. We've had employees come in and get trained up and go start their own development companies. And the reality is we spawn developers now. And that's partially, I think, because of the partnership requirements. Now, let's say this together. If I wanted to flip houses, for example, or I was a house flipper, or if I wanted to do remodels and sell properties, or I wanted to buy big apartment complexes and renovate them, that's very different from what we do. But if you made that goal, you'd really have to focus on what you had to do to get those goals. But the bigger and more important focus, as we're going to learn today in today's podcast, is who do we have to become? Who do we have to become is the bigger search. It's the bigger focus. It's the bigger benefit and blessing at the end of the road. Because you'll find, and I'm sure you would all agree with me if we were talking right now personally, most of the time when we set goals, we don't reach those goals. But many times we get to those goals and the goal changes and it becomes a different goal. And we think we want to do this, but we end up doing this. And it was the pursuit of the first goal that led us to the second goal. And that's proof in the pudding here again, that what we set our minds to is more about the journey. It's more about becoming than it is the end. And that's the fun part about this. So I want to really challenge you today to think about the phrase, we spawn developers. Here, now I can't guarantee that if someone comes in and hangs around that they're going to be a developer. I can't guarantee that. And a lot of them don't want to do that. They just want to learn the process as they become a real estate partner in these projects. They want to learn that process and become very educated in the development and construction world. And we do draw interest from a lot of subcontractors and contractors and people that are in other parts of real estate investments. And we do get some laymen that just say, hey, I'd love to learn about it and I'd love the returns. So we really focus on that. And again, that's part of who we are here. If you had a goal to be a real estate investor, for example, you might say, gosh, I want to flip a house and I want to make some money and I want to do it as quickly as I can with someone else's money. That's a goal that's interesting, but that's not the goal to become something different. So we want to make sure that we have in life this partnership mentality. Somebody comes in, we met with a great couple today. They said, hey, we have a couple $100,000. We want to put money in a deal. We want to be partners. And they immediately started comparing me to traditional investments that had internal rate of returns, and they had different decks on their presentations on their projects that they had coming up. And one of the first questions I got asked today is, you don't have a deck like this? And I said, no, we don't. And she said, your presentation is very different than the others that we've looked at. And I said, our company is very different and our goals are very different for you. And she goes, could you articulate that for me again? And I said, listen, we can get you in our projects, which are typically ground up construction for multifamily, mixed use, townhomes, or other projects that are similarly related to that. We can get you appreciation, depreciation, cash flow, mortgage reduction, all the benefits, the traditional package of benefits that come with real estate investments. And this is a very risky business. There's a lot of things that can go wrong along the way. And I said, but what the difference is for us is two things. Number one, we're going to also try to get the development and construction profits to bundle with the other things that we just mentioned. And they're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Listen, I can buy a 1970s apartment complex and put new windows in and put a new pool in and put a new roof on it. And that doesn't necessarily mean that the value is going to explode. But when you take a raw piece of land and you puzzle together and a great project and you put together the construction loans and put it together and get it established and stabilized after construction, you have a much better chance. Nothing is bulletproof, but you have a much better chance of having success. And then after all of that, you get all of the traditional benefits, the appreciation, depreciation, cash flow, mortgage reduction, all of those things come to you as a result of that. Now, the point that's super important is in a traditional investment, somebody might put in money as an investment, as an investor, and they might get a quarterly email if they're lucky. They might get an annual update if they're lucky, and they don't get much out of the process. They really don't. And they keep their fingers crossed. Some hold their breath and say, gosh, I hope this turns out right. We literally say, listen, if you're going to be a part of this process, you're going to participate. You're going to come to monthly, not annual, monthly meetings. You're going to vote on everything. You're going to participate because you're not an investor. You're a partner. And the reason we structured it, one of the reasons we structured it that way was to cause people to become something different in the future. The more these partners over the years have become versed in development and construction, the more referrals they've brought, the more people they've brought to the projects, the more projects they've tended to get into and stay into. If we have amazing projects, which they all have their warts and bumps and bruises, believe me, this is real world stuff. But these guys want to stay in, and becoming something different is special. What can I learn? What can I become? How do I think differently? So this was a really cool thing for me. And I said to myself, man, it's interesting that my mom was so good at making me think that way. And even this right now, decades later, I can sit here and tell you we do that on a regular basis here. So I wanted to share that skill set with you, because becoming is more important than arriving. So let me say that again. Becoming is more important than arriving. You want to focus on becoming. Someone that becomes something different has a much different life than someone who arrives at a place. So think of that in those terms. So, we've heard that trite saying that many people have had, that trite saying of, if you knew you couldn't fail, what would you go do? And that's just not true, right? And that's a statement to get people to really try, to really focus and say, man, maybe if I believed more, I could accomplish more. And maybe that works that way. One of the things that I look at is, if you had a magic power and were guaranteed that if you set your goals and pursued them with vigor and verve, that you could achieve them, what goals would you set? Now, this is a little bit of a trap. If you had a magical power to set goals and accomplish them, it's kind of like that last statement. What goals would you set? And here's the difference for me. We don't have the power to set a goal and do exactly what that goal is. We don't have the power to say, if I knew I couldn't fail, I would do. But here's the beautiful thing. If you set the goal and make the effort and have the focus and exercise the visualization, this important process, what is the result or the benefit of that journey is becoming. It's not, if I had a power and I could just do whatever I wanted and I knew it would happen, I would go do all these things that I'm unwilling to do now. It's not about what you get. I've been on this earth long enough to see that becoming is far better than arriving. Let me give you a perfect example. I had 15 or so years at the beginning of my real estate career where we just had unbelievable success. Everything went well. Crazy benefits, income, asset building, net worth and equity building. It was a phenomenal ride. And then the crash of the market in 2008, 9, and 10 hit. And again, we've talked about this in prior episodes. We had a couple of simple financing flaws and I lost everything. I ended up losing everything and it was not pretty. But here's the interesting part about that. In that process of building that company, it wasn't the properties that I owned, the equity that I held, the income that I made. It wasn't those things. It was who I became creating that business. Now, here's the interesting part. In the crash, I lost my way for a minute after I got that crash. I had my wife of 17 years divorce me. I went through some legal trials and all kinds of issues. And I really, really struggled. And the biggest thing that I lost, again, as we've talked about before, I lost my confidence. And the confidence is a crucial part of this. But after a minute, after I licked my wounds and laid in the ditch on the side of the road for a minute, and I got my confidence back, I said, this is silly. Man, I know so much. And I wasn't just armed with all the successes and all the properties and all the things that I'd done. I was now armed with understanding what I did wrong. And once I realized, hey, I am a different person, at the beginning of restarting, I said to myself, I got to start all over again. Oh my gosh, 15 years down the drain. And gosh, it's take me another 15 years. And I wasn't looking at it the right way. That was the completely wrong way to look at it. The start was much, much different. I was 16, 17 years older. I had all the experiences of building my business. I had the experiences of losing everything. And in all those things, I became something different. And in becoming different, the relaunch of the company was much, much, much different. You guys have heard these statistics before. In 1/5 of the time, with 1/7 of the employees, we built a business that was 5 times bigger than the one that I lost. How does that make sense? How does it make sense that we built something so much bigger, so much more beautiful, and so much faster? Well, it's simple. We became someone different, or I became someone different. So when I got my head straight and I got my goals on right and I got my confidence back, it was a rocket ship. It literally was a rocket ship. So again, becoming is more important than arriving. And even in losses, you can't, every goal doesn't work out right. But if you lose and you fail miserably in your goal, at least you can be taking notes and learn something. You can learn something along the way to retool and improve. So again, couple of points that I want to make on this goal setting process, because again, I'm all about becoming. That's the faith that I practice. It's the belief I have as a human being. It's the belief I have in my relationship with God. I need to try some small way to become like him more and more each day. I need to shirk off or get rid of the natural man, which is the man that doesn't want to be in concert with God's beliefs and foundations and rules and principles and systems that have served me so well over the years. So I literally have focused on everything in my life on becoming better. Now, it doesn't mean I'm better than the next guy, but it does mean that I learn, I believe, a lot faster and in many instances on how to be better. We've had some monumental, unbelievable successes, and we've had some brutal and painstaking failures and losses. And it's about the journey. It's about who you're becoming. So a couple of points that I want to make to you on goal setting. Again, the mindset should be, who do I want to become? If you have an overarching understanding of who you want to be, then the goals can become more crystallized or clear, and your ability to see them more lucid if you know who you want to be. So step number 1 is, who do you want to become? Who do you want to become? If goals are about becoming, let's just write down, who do we want to become? I'm back in the car. I remember when I was 17 years old, we lived in Southern California. We had been born in Utah, but we were raised in California. My mom, I had just got my driver's license a year earlier, and she said, hey, do you want to drive? And I had never done a super long drive on the freeway. And I started in Southern California, and we started talking. And I drove from Southern California to Provo, Utah, which is about a 9.5 hour drive, which doesn't seem like a big deal now. But back then it was, we just talked and talked and talked. That drive went so fast. But again, unbelievable conversation. So I want you to think about this. Who do you want to become? Who do you want to become? Next, that's step 1. Step number 2, what are the goals that you're going to need to get there? So if I want to be a professional athlete, if I want to be a real estate developer, if I want to be a professor in college, what do you want to be? And more specifically than a title, like a real estate developer, what do you want to be? Gosh, I want to be someone that affects people's lives by providing market rate housing in great areas and give people the housing that they need with this great shortage that we have going right now. Now that's becoming something, right? That's becoming something. And the goals along the way are going to be all the stepping stones. So number 1, overarching desire on who we want to become. Next, very specific goals. And there's 2 types of goals that are too easy and goals that are too hard. I want to make sure we talk about this. I was reading Atomic Habits, the book Atomic Habits. I really recommend you read it. And there's a principle in there called the Goldilocks principle. And it basically says that we are in the flow, or we do our best work when what we're trying to do is 4% harder than our maximum. So we have to give our maximum and best effort and a little bit more, and we get into a flow. It's called the Goldilocks principle because if we're below that maximum flow, we fall into boredom. If we're above, the effort that we're putting out and the goals that we're setting are above that 4% maximum, then we settle into failure. So there's this good, better, best, Goldilocks. Remember the 3 bears and the porridges, I should say. Good, better, best. You try too little, you're bored. You try too hard, you fail. There's that sweet spot in the middle. And those are the goals that we're looking for. So if your goals are too easy and you meet every goal, they're too easy. If your goals are too hard and you're constantly falling short of your goals, they're too hard. They have to be in a place where there's a stretch and a reach where you get there. Now, let's talk about what a goal failure is. If I set a goal and I fail, that doesn't mean it didn't lead me somewhere else, that I didn't become something else. I decided my goal when starting real estate was to buy duplexes and fourplexes and eightplexes, pay off a bunch of properties and enjoy the cash flows for the rest of my life. I didn't have aspirations to be a national or a regional developer. I didn't have aspirations to own thousands and thousands of doors. I didn't have aspirations to finance the things that we finance. But that was a result. So the goal changed, but it was a better goal. It was a better goal. So again, not too easy, boredom, not too hard, failure. Stay in that sweet spot where there's this consistent flow of things. And the goal should be about big efforts, a new future, be tenacious, be aggressive, possess grit, never give up. There's a great book, Grit by Angela Duckworth. Read it if you haven't had a chance to do that. Atomic Habits and Grit, two great books. So I want to give you some pointers as we round out the episode today on goal setting towards becoming, not goal setting for the sake of accomplishment or achievement. So here's some goals that I have for you, or here's some tidbits that I want to recommend to you to help you get this process started in your life, the process of becoming. Number one, see your future self. And by the way, there's a great article that I got some of this from called Becoming Future You, How to Live for the Person You're Becoming. Great article. I'll read that again so you can look it up and read it. Becoming Future You, How to Live for the Person You're Becoming. So some of the things that we've done here are from my mom and those car rides. Some are from the gain and loss and then gain again of my businesses. And others are from the two books that I just mentioned. But the article, the overarching article, or the under article here that's the foundational for this idea here is, again, how to live for the person you're becoming the future you. So number one, see your future self as your real self. Really focus on who you are. The more vivid who you are can become. Visualize it. Journal to that person. Talk to that person. You guys have heard me say I'm a constant, but we had a communication episode early in the podcast series. In that communication episode, I talk everywhere I go. And sometimes I'm talking to my future self. I'm doing role plays, I'm replaying meetings that I had, I'm preparing discourses or sermons or talks that I give at church. I'm doing all kinds of things, but sometimes I'm talking to my future self. Visualize it, articulate it, speak to that person, make goals. Don't see yourself as a distant self, or this article refers to it as your alien self. The further you feel or see this person being, this future self, the less likely that you will be to connect to it. And if you're not connected to it, the distance between arriving and achieving and becoming there are going to be filled with different steps. And if you're visualizing this on a regular basis and very, very connected to what you want to become and the goals that you want to set. So again, the stronger the psychological connection to the future is, the more likely you'll make decisions to get there. Visualize, vivid imagination. This is one thing I have to thank my mom. She just constantly was asking me, what do you want to be? Why do you want to be that? How are you going to get there? What are you going to do about it? What are your stepping stones? What do you see as issues and problems along the way? Great self-talking that I do now because of her. So visual, vivid imagination, structure the future self in detailed terms. Again, the more enhanced, the more connected you'll be. Again, be very specific about your visualizations. What does it look like? What does it feel like? How do you feel? How do you sound? Where are you living? What have you accomplished? What did you have to get past to get there? So very, very cool. The more specific details, the more specific role plays, the more likely that journey ends in becoming. And what's really cool is in that journey of becoming, when your goals line up with who you're becoming, that's neat, man. That's special to watch goals get checked off. Next one you want to look at as sacrifices. So sometimes there's sacrifices that we're doing now. For example, I broke my wrist about 7-8 months ago, and I had to stop doing workouts at the gym that involved weight training. And that was very hard for me. And since it took me 4 or 5 months to get that fixed, and my wrist has been at full speed probably the last 10 weeks or so, and I can really feel the difference in my body again. pushing a lot of weights. We do a lot of weights. I do weight training 6 days a week on different muscle groups. And we're dialing in the nutrition now too, which is going to be another fantastic addition to this. But it's very interesting that I could wake up every morning and say, this is a sacrifice to go to the gym. Every night I go to bed, I'm a consummate late eater. I'm busy all day. I'm frenetic. I don't eat well. And then I get to this last meal of the day and I eat too much. And it's a consummate issue. And that's a sacrifice for me not to relax and wind down with a great meal. That's something I really, really enjoy. But that sacrifice of not doing that is much better if I can learn that it's a sacrifice to who I want to become and the future self. Very, very important. So again, align the daily decisions with the values of your future self. Decide who that future self is going to be. Talk to, role play, set up values, systems, steps and points along the way, and then align your values. Your values will change significantly. I'll tell you what, when I started real estate in 1994 and then lost everything in 8, 9, 10, and 11, my value systems were very different from 94. Then when I rebooted my career, they were much different than they were from 2008. And they're much, much different today than they were, I should say, after those other periods of my life, because we're focusing heavily on becoming something different. Again, one of the other things that this really caught me off guard, use age progressed images. There's computer programs and AI platforms that say, hey, here's a picture of me, age me 5 years, age me 10 years, age me 20 years, age me 30 years. You can put that up and have conversations with that. Now, some of us might not be excited about aging as much if we're looking at our aged self, but that might be a challenge for some of us to take better care of ourselves. Gosh, I'm going to look like that in 20 years. I better start doing some things differently. But use age progressed images, write letters to your future self, journal for your future self, journal what life's going to be like for your future self. I mean, these are all really cool things. But again, realize the future self may change as your journey moves forward. The arrival at the end of the journey is never, ever what we expect. And when we give ourselves that gift of understanding that, then the specific goal, I want to own 20 homes. Well, guess what? You might not own 20 homes in 10 years. You might become a real estate developer and have projects going in multiple states that there are no buildings that we own or are keeping or developing or entitling right now that are 20 units. So it could be a very, very different outcome. But again, becoming changes who we are, our future self and our goals, and is typically much, much better if we have our mindset the right way. So really, really neat opportunity here to create that overarching image. Who do you want to become? What do you want to do to get there? How do we set goals to support that? And then really visualize that in the future. And you'll see that you will gravitate towards places that help you become instead of places that help you do. For example, again, I'll go back to what I said at the beginning. Many of the capital partners that we involve in our business here come here not to reach the goal of financial prosperity. They come here to become something different. And obviously the hope as a regular investor, as a partner, is that our deals work out and that they're positive and that they result in great results. But the biggest benefit is becoming someone better, becoming someone different. So that's the podcast for today. I'm super excited to share this with you. We'll catch you on the next episode.